Hey everybody, it's Jordan Carroll or JRC, the SLP. For today's beautiful views, we have Tammy Lee or Simple Speechy on Instagram. She is a grad student, a mentor, an advocate, and so much more. And thank you so much for being here, Tammy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, yes, I'm so excited. So let's just start with a little bit of background about who you are and how you identify.
Yeah, I am a first generation Vietnamese American. My parents immigrated to Vietnam after the Vietnam War with the Refugee Act. And so I it's been a little bit of an influx in order to just get to know myself and my identity. We'll talk more about that later. But I am from Chicago, born and raised. And I did my undergrad at DePaul University, and now I'm a first year grad student at Northwestern. And during my time at DePaul, I just was originally a business major, and then I decided to switch over to human development, which because DePaul didn't have a CSD program, so I've been navigating the field by myself, kind of getting to know what this is about and what it's like. And here I am.
Right, right. You didn't have any like prereqs or anything in undergrad. You took a very different approach, which is definitely something I want people to hear about.
Yeah. So initially, I was a business major, like I said a little bit, but I just didn't feel passionate about what I was doing. I kind of felt like I was just going through the motions of things. And so during high school, I worked with a multidisciplinary team in a adaptive physical education classroom. So I worked with children with disabilities and just all abilities across different needs. And I worked with an SLP. One of the children that I was working with, he was severely disabled and he had no communicative ability, no verbal communicative abilities, but he was able to communicate through eye gaze. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And I just wanted to hear more about it. And at this time, I kind of felt like a little bit of an epiphany, I'd say. And so I went back and I talked to the SLP, and I shadowed her for a day and kind of interviewed her for one of my classes that I was taking. But I just felt like I wasn't fulfilled and wasn't making a difference. And so after seeing her work and observing what she was doing, this was something that I wanted to learn more about and that I felt like I was more passionate about. So then I decided to pursue an internship through my university and work alongside her. And so I gained a deeper understanding of what SLP is, more so like in the school setting type of thing. And um, I got started with SLP from there, which kind of
Mhm.
sparked everything to where I am now.
Yeah, that's a really cool story having that like epiphany, like you said. And then on top of that, having the initiative to like find an internship or find a way to, get an internship through your undergrad, which, wasn't available. You had to make it available. So I think that's really cool. And yeah, definitely an inspiring story.
My experience with mentorship actually started with my mom. So kind of wanting to have an experience to give back. During her time growing up, she experienced severe poverty. There were times where she didn't eat. There were times she had to leave elementary school, I think the second grade, to just provide for her family. And she came to America, became an entrepreneur, kind of saw a really big need of the way that she grew up versus the way that I'm growing up here. And she was like, no, you're going to be humble. You're going to experience, a lot of the things that I want you to encapsulate and I want these values instilled in you. And so she took it upon herself to kind of bring me in the realms of mentorship and in the realms of volunteer work to see what that was like. And there were a few summers during my childhood where I would go back to Vietnam all the time and we would work with students who didn't have proper resources or proper access to resources in Vietnam. It's just the life there is just a lot different than here. But I got started with mentorship through that, kind of working with students, teaching them English during my time in Vietnam. And I want to say like I was 12. I was in the sixth grade, so I was about 12. And then I would work with younger students, teaching them English. And so this was a really eye opening experience for me. Kind of took this with me growing up, and I was really involved during high school, doing everything that I could. I was in the mentality of no matter what I do during high school, like I need to get all of this done and be so involved for college, which was completely not the case because I got into college just fine. And so during college, I actually applied for a scholarship. It was a social restorative justice scholarship, and what that looked like was just my ability to advocate. It talked about my ability to advocate and what I would want to do with my future career path. And at this time, I did not know what I wanted to do with my future career path. I just said I wanted to do business, but I connected a lot of myself, my lived experiences, my upbringing to this. And so I got really involved during my time at DePaul with social sort of justice, but I was also involved in mentorship and leadership in my organizations. For example, like a dance marathon for Children's Miracle Network. I was involved in a sorority for a little bit, doing philanthropy work, just all across the spectrum of volunteer work. Anything that I could do, I was trying to do it. And so after my time at DePaul, I really wanted to carry on this mentorship because I felt like something was missing. This was work that I was always doing. And so after I graduated, I felt like I wanted to do more. And so, especially during quarantine when that hit, everyone was in stay-at-home order. I felt like I had a lot of knowledge and I had a lot of resources. And this was something that I've been thinking about for a few months, but I didn't pursue it. And I was like, you know what? This is the time. I'm going to do this. So then I created my platform, and now Simple Speechy is where it is. And during this time, I've met so many amazing people, I've connected with so many different people of out of field majors, career changers, people who are first gen immigrants, and people who are even out of this country. So it's been so cool.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that my ability, just like being a first generation, has a really big impact on me. I grew up with an extended family of 11, and that's a huge gap that not a lot of people see and a lot of people experience. And I remember learning about extended families in social studies, and people thought that was so weird. And I said, I live with an extended family. That's normal. They're like, oh, really? That's kind of weird. And it was just, I think that was my first experience kind of just feeling really different. And this
Mm.
was just something that I took with me. And as it continued to grow, I experienced a lot more things where I felt really different. I grew up also in a predominantly white community. And so, though this community was also like, there was a lot of European immigrant, first generation immigrants, but it just wasn't the same. I want to say, like, just being acknowledged of like my visible differences was kind of clear to them. And so, I was the only speak I was the only English speaking member of my family. And I remember another time where I had to go to my parent teacher conferences with my parents because they weren't understanding what my teacher was saying about me. And they're like, she can't be in here. And I was, I have to be here. My parents don't know what you're saying. And
Mhm.
so
Especially when they weren't providing, any type of interpretation. That doesn't make sense to me.
exactly. And so this was prevalent through me throughout my education, also within healthcare. There were so many times where I had to go with my grandparents to appointments, with my mom to appointments, because there wasn't a translator available. There was only certain days where they were working out of the month. And so as a 10-year-old, how is that really appropriate, or how is that okay that the healthcare and the education system isn't equipping these families with differences like myself with people that they need? And so I
Mhm.
think this piece of me has been something that I've been able to connect with other people with, of like, hey, I also experienced that, of these little differences that I didn't really realize that impacted me until later on. And then another big piece of me is um, just the perception, the work ethic of my mom, like you were saying, like I was talking about earlier, and like we were saying, I think that I had to work really hard, especially like if you were in this country, you have to make it, you have to work hard. Like you're here, we're here. You have to do something, you have to make it. And I always felt like the language barrier for my family was just something that I had to work a little bit harder to do. And especially with coming to college, I had no idea what financial aid was. How do I even apply to
Mm.
loan? What does this even look like? And the terminology was just also complex. The stuff is also condensed. And so as a 17-year-old applying to college, I had no idea what any of this meant. And so I sought out a high school advisor who was very helpful. But at the same time, I was still confused. It was just a lot to navigate for myself and for my family. And I think my cultural
Mm,
beliefs, experiences with my upbringing. So the Vietnamese culture, my Vietnamese culture, because each culture is so different, I think that it affected the way that I go about schooling, especially because my mom had to leave elementary school at such a young age in comparison to
mhm.
other people of other cultures and just like the general Western culture. A lot of people are
Yeah.
more dependent on their parents. I could not depend on my parents. I was independent. I had to
Mm.
learn to depend on myself.
And it
Um,
puts such a large value on education when you realize, like, people take this for granted. Like, everybody does not get this education that I'm getting, even until middle school, into high school. Like, people take it for granted. And I think that's a great point. I'm sorry if I cut you off. I want you to continue.
I think it just kind of affected the way that I went about everything. I saw a lot of my friends asking their parents for questions, and I asked them like, "Oh, can you ask them this for me?" And they were saying that no, that's weird. Why would I ask them that for you? And I think that they didn't understand, especially like when we were younger, what that was really like. For example, like I asked about a homework assignment and because I didn't understand what the directions meant and I wanted them to ask their parents what it meant. And so like I was trying to seek out resources even when I was younger. And I think now that's why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I want to make the changes in the field that I am doing because we don't provide the proper resources in general with the field of SLP. I remember watching a TED talk in one of my classes of how this like our healthcare system makes such big assumptions about who people are. For example, that they can read English, that they can speak English, that they know what these documents mean. And conclusively, it just said how a lot of the times the education system and the healthcare system bases a lot of things based on a white middle class family that has access to all these things. So it was really eye opening to dive into these things now and kind of realize, oh, these are the changes that I want to make. And this is the reason that why my lived experiences are so valuable that allow me to connect as a future clinician.
Definitely. I completely agree. It's just so many different experiences that we have to consider that honestly are not considered. And it's crazy to think about, like, even when you just talk about how you had to translate for your family like your entire life. Like, that's such a large burden on a child that people don't think about. Like that's literally like changed everything in your life. Like it's changed every aspect of your life. It's changed how you see the world. And then especially now, like one of my best friends, her mom is Spanish speaking only. And she ended up having to go to the hospital during COVID and nobody could be in there with her. And just like she doesn't speak English and she's, around all these doctors that are just trying to tell her what's best for her and she has no way to respond and the family can't be there. And even on the phone, like she couldn't have her phone or didn't know how to work FaceTime and nobody there can explain it to her. So it's just like it's so much it's so many experiences that people don't even realize are happening because as humans we're especially in like an individualistic society we focus on ourselves, we focus on our story, and we don't realize like even how our story is impacting everybody else. So yeah, that was great, that was a lot.
I would say to be you and to be fully you because your work, what you're doing, your need to be in this field is to be authentically yourself. You're going to be a voice of change. And I'm saying this because during my time, I felt very intimidated and defeated. During my time, just figuring out what SLP is and what this looks like. I remember one of my advisors that I sought out of like, I want to switch my major and become a speech language pathologist. And she blatantly told me, why are you here then? Switch your school. You're too far along. You're not going to make it. And so that was really eye opening to me of the lack of knowledge and the lack of accessibility in that part. And so I took it upon myself and I decided to just navigate things on my own. So even though you are being there and you're taking this space, advocate for yourself and ask for help. If these people can't find these spaces for you, find a community to lean on. I found another peer at the time too, who was also looking into going to SLP, and she told me like, oh, she's taking prerequisites at Ohio State. And so I thought that was really interesting. So I looked into this process myself. Long story short, I ended up like, it's kind of like I'm showing the advisor that I actually could do it. So I ended up graduating early, and I got my prerequisites done, and it was like, oh, like I can do it, and I graduated from here. So what does that really look like? And
Mhm.
I think a lot of the times this intimidation, this fear can kind of skew us off of our path, but embrace that. I think it's really important to embrace the differences that you hold and the differences that you want to make, because we all pave our own paths, and there's no one path that fits all. There's so many different things that people can do and how they can become an SLP. Going to grad school is just another experience. And I think a lot of the times people are also intimidated in terms of higher ed and what this looks like. How can they fill these spaces, but also still be themselves? And I've caught myself in these moments too of, okay, the institution I'm attending is a predominantly white institution, especially in my cohort. I feel very different, especially in this remote space where I am seeing all these faces, and a handful of faces are not white. So I think at the same time, it's about taking up these spaces and owning it, because people need you. And I think that in this time of navigating and wanting to diversify SLP, it looks a lot different.
It's yeah, it's a lot. I think um, people view getting into the field as like a very monolithic experience. Like, you do this and then you have to do this and then you have to do this. You graduate with your undergrad degree, hopefully in speech pathology, because if not, you just messed up, like it's going to set you like 5 years back, which is like definitely what they tell you.
Mhm.
Then, so if you graduate with your undergrad degree, you get some masters, you're not supposed to take a gap year because that's going to mess you up too. It's going to set you back. You're not supposed to get any other experience. You're supposed to go straight through. I think it's just there's a lot of different ideas like that that makes it intimidating. Like you said, intimidating is a great word, because if I mess up on one of those aspects, like, did I just mess up my entire future? Like, and when that's really not the case. There are definitely so many different paths that we can take.
Mhm. I think being fully virtual has been so tough because I'm a very interpersonal learner. I like to be around other people, like to collaborate together, and being in this online space, it's very confined. I'm doing grad school and I'm in my childhood home right now, and so what that really looks like is, I'm in my comfort zone, but I'm being forced to get outside of my comfort zone, and now it looks different for a lot of us being in the spaces where we're in, because we might not be in a space where we are comfortable sharing our screens, where we might not have like the access to Wi-Fi at the time, because what if other people are using it and you can't have good connection? So it's looked a lot different for a lot of different people, but that was something that I wanted to be mindful of, especially during my time in grad school, because I realized like I am in my childhood home. This is something that I do have to consider, but I did make the decision to go now. But I think at the same time, my first quarter was really challenging in wanting to connect and wanting to build friendships, especially in my cohort, because no one else really knows what you're doing besides people that are in your cohort. And so, like through working in group work and connecting with other people, I've been able to make friends from that. But it's still tough because I think at the same time, when you're experiencing a lot of these things on your own, it's like you don't really know how to navigate this and how you should be navigating this, because no one prepares you how to do grad school fully online in a pandemic. But my experience with the program itself, I think it's been wonderful. My professors are very supportive, and they are amazing in terms of what needs to be done. Like they're very aware. For example, one of my professors, she changed over the summer, she changed one of her courses to fully be culturally sensitive and culturally responsive. And so I think it is a great stepping stone for my program. They also recently created a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that I'm also on. So I think they are taking the steps and moving towards the right direction, of wanting to be anti-racist, of wanting to be anti-discriminatory and providing culturally sensitive, culturally responsive clinicians. But I think, like, in my personal opinion, this does not reflect the school in any way. I just think that there's always more that can be done. For example, looking at
Oh,
Northwestern
always.
itself, um, you look at the community, and part of Evanston, where Northwestern is very beautiful, fully new in some spaces, and then you look at the other side of Evanston, where Northwestern is, and it's very gentrified. This space, there's a complete divide, and you can tell when you're going down a street, and it's really eye opening in the sense of what can I be doing? Can I be doing more? And I think a lot of the times, I was talking to one of my friends in my cohort about this, and we were talking about how vastly different it is. And though we're in this space and we're taking up this space, what can we do with this? And
Mhm.
it's been really interesting to kind of just explore these following topics with my program director, who's been really amazing, with some of the faculty that I've connected with, and just with my peers, because there are people who really want to make a difference, who are great allies, and they just don't really know how to start. And so, in the same time, I think that um, in terms of my clinical and kind of my didactic coursework, it's relatively the same in terms of what I expected it to be, but in terms of being responsive, they are taking more action than I expected it to be. Because honestly, like, I came in with the intention, since it's a predominantly white institution, it would be a lot of more performative action, but they're actually doing the work, and I'm very, very
Mhm.
appreciative of that.
Right, right. That's good to hear. I'm happy about that. And I know that Northwestern, it was your dream program, right?
Yes. I was looking in a space where I would feel supported. I think that was the biggest thing for me, because um, my first experience in the field, I was very taken aback by it, because I was surrounded by people who were very competitive. It wasn't a collaborative space. It was always, oh, I'm going to one up you, or you're not doing this good enough. And in terms of this, I advocated for myself with my supervisor, and I was still getting um, unhelpful responses. And so I was like, oh, wow, is this what the field's going to be like? I'm very intimidated, and I don't think this is going to be the proper space for me. And so during Northwestern's preview day, they had an opportunity for me to connect with people that are currently in their program. So me being me, I connected with people of color in their program, sought out what their experience has been like, because I want to make sure that I feel comfortable, that I feel supported, that I feel like I'm going to be okay in these spaces. And after talking to a bunch of students, I felt like this was going to be an okay space for me, and I trusted that. And because I couldn't really be in this space, I couldn't feel the energy of other people and what they're experiencing because COVID. But I think now they've embodied it. It's been very collaborative and such a supportive space in terms of faculty as well. I also wanted to get involved in research. So right now I'm involved in two labs. I'm in a bilingual lab and an early intervention lab. So it's been so nice to explore these areas of my interest and kind of get to know what this is really like at Northwestern. And another piece of it is just the clinic space. I loved everything that they offer, and it's very unique in having this experience be provided as me with to me. In addition to being from the Chicagoland area, it's relatively close to where I am, and so I just love being able to stay home and just to feel more support from my family and my friends, in addition to um, moving and transitioning into this new part of my life.
Definitely, definitely. Those are important things to look for. I think location is a big one that people don't think about because you're gonna need a support system. I definitely moved across the country and didn't know anybody, but I was in person, so I got to know my cohort, and we were very supportive of each other, which was nice. But like you said, being able to be around your family and your friends that you know will support you, and then going into a program that is supportive, that you have evidence will be supportive of you. I think that's really important too. And then, like you said, being able to know what your interests are in. And if you're not sure, being able to try different things, look into different types of research, those are all very important. And so I think those are good notes.
Within grad school, just the application process of grad school, the GRE, kind of like how we've been talking about the standard of applying to grad school, it looks a lot different. And so, you've talked about biases in the GRE and SLPs of color. Everyone's been raising a really great awareness about it. And at the same time, it's like, yes, this is true. Why aren't schools putting a greater effort towards realizing this? Because we're not based on a number. I'm a horrible standardized test taker. I'm awful.
Man,
I
so
think
bad.
yeah, and it's now too, not just standardized tests. I just get really nervous during tests. So, I think a lot of the times it's like, how are you basing students off of numbers and how is the material relevant? Math math and verbal and writing, I get writing could be helpful to justify that, but then place a writing sample instead. A lot of schools do have writing samples. Provide a more holistic process. Look at providing interviews, get to know the actual applicant rather than basing them off of a number. And oftentimes, I've heard that the GRE is a number to divide you between. So, say we're both applying, we both have very similar backgrounds, personal statements, and you got a higher GRE score than I did. So they're going to give you an offer over me, and I'll be placed on the wait list. Do you like? How is that really fair? And so, providing another space where you can get to know the person that you are giving an offer to is so important. And I think that at the same time, a lot of efforts are being made. I know some programs are fully omitting the GRE because of these biases that they hold. So that's amazing that some schools are making those changes. In the field, I definitely want to see more greater awareness of what SLP is, because I think from the start, like I did not know what it was until high school. And so if we have a greater awareness of introducing students to this field of speech language pathology, what it is, we can bring more inclusivity, more BIPOC students, students from diverse backgrounds into this space and make it more comfortable, make it more safe, make it more inclusive. And I love to see that work being done. Oh, also, in terms of just aid for grad school, I think that tuition cost is so expensive. Like most students, most BIPOC students, like typically looking at SES status, it's like a low middle SES background. And like speaking on my own terms, I cannot afford like the amount of debt that I'm in is ridiculous, and it's not fair for anyone. And I think that
No, I hate talking about it. I owe so much money in student loans, and people are always asking me like, "What are your tips?" Like, listen, I'm telling everybody right now, I have no tips. Like, if you can avoid them because it's a horrible situation to be in. But also, like, what other choice do we have? So, yeah, that's also something I would like to see change. But go ahead.
yeah, I just think a lot of these times these spaces aren't fair because I I'm connecting with a lot of people in my cohort, and they're saying how they might not take out loans because their parents are helping them and they're paying for their living expenses and they're moving to areas. And, I think that's really great for them. At the same time, it's like in my head, I'm thinking, oh, well, I wish I could do that. I wish I had the finances to do that. And they're talking about how their parents are lawyers and their parents are doctors. And I'm like, oh, okay, like that's super cool. That's awesome that they can support you in these spaces. And here I am trying to figure out how I can still apply for my loans and remembering the same amount of terminology that was used in my undergrad. And I just, it's been challenging to navigate. So I just think that also in terms of aid and awards and scholarships for students, more should be done, especially for BIPOC students, because you're looking at academic and financial need, but like in terms of financial need, okay, so you're looking at a cohort of 75, and so you only allocate 30% of scholarships to students, and so 30% of 75, that's already cutting the people that you're looking at. And then if you come in with people who have really great ideas of what they want to do and what are you looking for, and so I think creating these spaces where you can create more inclusive price tags would be helpful, because I think that, yes, everyone goes through these high tuition costs and it's really costly, but what does it look like in these spaces? And how are you expecting people to be in debt for the rest of their lives? And how is that fair? Because also some people are just predisposed to conditions where they don't have these resources of financial income and where they can make these ends meet. And so I don't know, I just think it's been very eye-opening for me, especially to just be in this space as a first gen navigating this.
Yeah, definitely. We need a lot of help in that area. Like it's crazy how much we have to go into debt to be in a service industry. Like we're literally like everything we do is to help other people and we have like all this debt on our backs. It doesn't really make sense to me. And even if there was just like even if it wasn't like aid or scholarship. Like there should be more programs or like organizations or employers that offer like some type of loan forgiveness or offer some type of like payment plan that will help you pay your loans or put money toward it. Like there's definitely a few contracting companies that do that, but definitely not enough. Everybody needs help. Like everybody,
Yeah.
most especially all like BIPOC students. Like I don't know anybody that doesn't have any loans. Like it's crazy. And then going back to what you said about graduate programs and the GRE and how, that can be used to determine which individual they want to choose. Like you said, I don't think that's fair, especially when we know what the
Mhm.
research says about these standardized assessments. Like it's clear, it's been in the research for decades at this point. Um, and like, there's definitely other ways that we can get to know these students. Like, okay, if you have these two students that you're comparing, they're very similar. Why not just hold a 30-minute virtual interview with both of them, decide who you think will be the best candidate, who you think will fit, who do you think is the most, energized to be in the field? Like that can give you so much more information than the GRE. The GRE literally gives you nothing. It's not relevant.
Yeah.
It's not relevant at all.
I think that in terms of my skill sets, I think empathy, compassion is a really big thing. And there's a difference between being empathetic and being compassionate. I feel like a lot of that goes hand in hand sometimes for people. And I think having these spaces where you can be empathetic and be compassionate takes you to another level. And in terms of just having a sense of cultural curiosity to provide that individualistic care because everyone is so different. My experience as a Vietnamese woman is different than my mom's experience, and it's different than my grandma's experience, and will be different
Mm.
for my future clients who might be Vietnamese. And how can I ask those questions to probably treat them not only for like someone of the same cultural background as me, but for anyone of a culturally diverse background. And I think this individualistic approach will allow me to build better rapport with clients um, and their families and being able to support them and their growth and what that looks like. And I think a lot of my lived experiences, I can empathize and I can connect with them to provide that sense of, you're not alone, that sense of support with them. And I think that efforts are just constantly being made for me and wanting to just learn and wanting to just grow. I think that I've unpacked a lot. Is, for example, in one of my classes, we're learning about cultural biases and assessments. And so I know that you're very, aware of those cultural biases and assessments. But one of my textbooks actually mentioned the term cultural competency, and it's a 2020 textbook. And I'm completely like annoyed by it because, it's a 2020 textbook. Why are you even saying this? What does this really look like? What does cultural competency look like versus cultural humility? And so I think in terms of just wanting to have this sense of I want to be better and I want to be better for the other people that I will serve, um, has been one of my roots of just becoming a clinician. And I think that this is something that I can bring to the field and will be something that I'll carry with me in, my stride to become a clinician.
Yeah, I think those are really essential. And one of the things I talked about last episode was really the basis of being culturally responsive is that me as a Black woman and you as a woman of color, there are a lot of things that we will understand about each other without even having to know anything about each other. And on the other hand, your experience as a Vietnamese woman is going to be extremely different than my experience as a Black woman. Our families are going to have different experiences. Just like you said, even you have a different experience from your mom. I think just knowing that each individual, like, yes, you'll be able to relate to some things, and you're not going to be able to relate to all of them. Like it's understanding that, it's respecting that, and treating everybody as an individual. So I love that. I think
Um,
you're going to be a great contribution to the field. The fact that you're already thinking about these things, I think, is awesome, and you're already making a difference for yourself in your program and with all the people that you're helping that you don't even know. So I think that's really cool. So, what is your favorite kind of self care? How do you take care of yourself? How do you, give back to you?
yeah, so recently, I've been going on walks. It's finally nice out in Chicago. I think today's almost hitting 50. So I've been going on walks. That really helps me because being cooped up in the house all the time really just takes a toll on myself, my mood, my mental health. Another thing that I do is just being able to allow myself to set a boundary and disconnect from school, especially with the platform Simple Speechy. I love it so much. I love being able to connect, but at the same time, it's speech basically 24/7 for me because if I'm not doing school, I'm doing Simple Speech, and if I'm not doing Simple Speechy, I'm doing school, and that was really hard for me my first quarter, learning to find a balance between this. So I've been allowing myself to set these boundaries. My favorite type of, I don't know, I think that self care for me has looked a lot different now, especially just knowing, I used to think it was face masks and, taking a bubble bath, which is all really
Mhm.
nice. That's your self care that works, do you? And I love face masks myself, but actually allowing myself, cooking for myself, that's a huge thing. Because at times, like, admittedly, I'm not proud of it, but I will forget to eat. I'll be so busy, I'll forget to eat.
Mhm.
And it's not normal for students to, constantly be in this such big mood of productivity that they're so burnt out and they're so tired that, like, throughout their days they forget to do basic needs to eat. How are you supposed to feel your mind, your body? um, so I've been meal prepping, cooking for myself, providing, a lot of things that, I realize that I need for myself. And another thing that actually is like a self-care thing, I would say, is just being able to get up and just to move around because I'm sitting around all day. So I take 5 minutes out of my day now to just get up to walk around. Even if it's my house, I'll pace around in circles.
Mhm.
So I think that's really helpful for me to just take a step back. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, that's been hard too because I'll find myself, constantly getting worked back up and being like, oh, I want to reply to this person and I want to help this person
Mhm.
out. So yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I definitely understand the social media boundaries. It is not easy. It is not easy because, like you said, you always have people, reaching out to you for questions and help, and you want to be there for as many people as possible. Or like, oh my God, I just had this idea for this post that like so many people are gonna get like something from,
Yeah.
and it's constant. It's definitely constant. But I like what you said. Self care is not always pampering yourself, even though that is a great form of self care, and I love to pamper myself. A lot of times it's really just taking care of your basic needs. Like, are you drinking water? Did you eat?
Mhm.
Did you take your vitamins and medication? You should take a nap, like
Yeah.
disconnecting from social media, just giving yourself time to rest, listening to a podcast, not speech related. Doesn't have to be this, but
Yeah.
just like giving yourself time to take care of you and what are your needs, what does my body need right now, getting your movement in,
Mhm.
maybe some shopping, maybe get yourself something nice. Doesn't have to be all the time. Money is definitely a thing, but what do you need? How can you take care of you?
A quote that I would live by is "The sun will rise and we will try again." I don't remember how I came across that, but I love that because it just reminds me that, like, I'm very hard on myself. I talk a little bit about that on my platform, but I deal a lot with self-doubt and negative self-talk, but just knowing that I can try again and just knowing that there will be space and there's another day, another opportunity for me to constantly change, to evolve, to be better, and just to not feel so defeated, to have a space where I can move forward. That's a quote that I live by.
Love
And
that.
what else? I'm sorry, what else for you? Oh yeah, social media handles. So
Yeah.
my Instagram's at Simple Speechy, and also my website's www.simplespeechy.com. If you ever want to email me, it's simplespeechy@gmail.com. But I'm more active on my Instagram DMs if you ever want to DM me there. Yeah.
Yes, and you definitely should reach out, see everything that she has to offer. She's a great page for students and for SLPs alike. I follow her. I get things from her all the time. So yes, definitely check out her platform. Thank you for all that you're doing. Again, thank you for being here. and really appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Something that I also sorry, can I say something else?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to say that I want to tell everyone that, you don't have to have everything figured out, and your narrative is constantly evolving all the time. No matter what you want to do, your passion, hold that with you because that's going to take you to where you want to be and to be part of the change. It allows you to have this sense of resilience, to have this perseverance, to be along with people who will tell you that you're not cut out for here. Prove to them that you can do it. Show them that you are better than that, you're stronger than that, because you have gotten this far for a reason. And so I really want anyone who's dealing with this sense of self-doubt of navigating grad school and kind of just what that looks like, feeling this defeat, that your mission and your purpose is so much bigger and that you're here for a reason. So just leaving it with that.
Period. Period. That's a great place to end. I appreciate that. I hope everybody listens to that, internalizes it because it's the truth. We need you here. You're supposed to be here. And, F the haters. There'll definitely be people that tell you won't make it and don't believe them because I believe that you can make it. And so does Tammy. Definitely check her out at Simple Speechy. And again, thank you.
Thanks.